What up, Seatronauts? Welcome back to another episode of More Than Music. I'm your host for today's episode. My name is Guasco. Today, my guest is Samira Lobby, an incredible musician, performer, and activist. She's been a great friend of Soul Seed for a long time. We perform with multiple of her groups, Soul Vibrator, aka Soul Vibes, and also Sage Crow The Flock, an incredible super group right here in the Eugene community. I was blessed to sit down with Samira. We've been friends for a long time, but I finally had a chance to dive into some deeper conversations, which I really appreciated and got incredible value from, and I know that you will as well. Samira spent time leading the diversity committee for the School of Journalism at the University of Oregon, and that gave her a unique perspective on being a person of color in the Eugene community. And as a musician here, we deep dive into her incredible relationship with both of her parents. Her mom is from Kenya and her father as well. We talk about what life has been like through the quarantine and everything. She's had some unique situations, which all of us have through this time, and how her partner has really kind of been that pillar for her, and how she's got through some troubling times recently. So had a wonderful conversation with Samira. You will recognize her voice from the song Possible Obstacles, which you can find on our most recent album, The Spark. You can also catch that song music video on YouTube, Possible Obstacles, on our YouTube page. And you can catch Samira Lobby live with us at Hi-Fi Music Hall for our album release show a couple years ago. I had a wonderful time sitting down with Samira. She's a sweetheart. She's also a fierce activist, and she's about the performance and singing and has a lot of passions and pride. And it was an absolute pleasure to have her as my guest today. So without any further ado, please enjoy this episode with our good friend, Samira Lobby.
Welcome to the More Than Music podcast, hosted by us, Soul Seed. We'll be sharing tour stories, lyric breakdowns, and insights into our approach to music, the art, as well as the business. We'll also be interviewing some of the friends and family we've made throughout the years in the spirit of sharing their many marvelous trials and triumphs. So get comfortable and join us as we explore more than music.
With us today, my good friend, Samira Lobby. Samira, how are you?
Hey, Sky, I'm doing great. So good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
I'm very, very excited to have you on. We, the boys and I have been making a long list of guests and trying to brainstorm all these people coming up. And we wanted to make sure to have you on for a number of things. We're obviously going to get into a lot in this conversation. But you have created a track with us, which we'll get into later on in the show. And I always find that extra special. So as many people on this podcast, we met through music, but with the podcast being more than music, music kind of dominates my life for sure. And as far as I know, yours as well in normal circumstances. But per usual, everybody is about so many different things. So you have so many other things to bring to the table. And I'm excited to get into that with you this evening. So you and I met through your time with Soul Vibes, which we'll get into in a second. And then we eventually grew to create a track together, and we spent a lot of time on stage, spent a lot of time on and off stage at events, local events, and traveling and such. But unfortunately, until now, we haven't spent a lot of time just not having music be a part of the scene. So I'm excited about that. So, let's just kick it off with kind of where the year has taken us. You and I are both musicians in a normal circumstance, but everything has been flipped upside down, of course, with COVID and the quarantine situation. And we are up here in the Northwest, in Oregon, and our rules and things have been pretty strict from the beginning. We were one of the first states to really lock down. And at this point, we're one of the last states to relinquish that and get back to things as some of the other country is opening up here. So, my first question to you is, how has the quarantine and COVID affected your life specifically via music or otherwise this past year and a half?
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on that stuff. I also just really want to thank you for having me on, and the shout outs about spending a lot of time on stage together and some of the traveling and stuff. definitely miss that. And COVID has definitely changed my life. I mean, first of all, I'm not going to lie. It was really rough in the beginning. I felt like I had finally gotten down to a routine with work, yoga, music. I was just starting off with Sage Crow and like getting into a normal setting of having like soul vibrator rehearsal and Sage Crow rehearsal, going to yoga and meditation very often throughout the week. And then like meeting my friend at the hot tub at OK Fitness. And, you know, like everything was going really well. I felt like my health was really good. And then COVID hit and that all really changed. I mean, my partner and I both live together and he's also a musician. And so he kind of had the same lifestyle of like always playing music, always having gigs. And then now we're both at home together all the time. And that was like a major change for us. Like there's no one else I'd rather be stuck in quarantine with, but it was like such an adjustment. And I know everyone can relate. So that was really interesting. And now like it's been so long and we really are so grateful that we have each other to make music with. But it's so different than like being with my 7-piece funk band or like 9-piece that Soul Vibrator is. So yeah, that was really, really a big change of like not playing music, not doing like my normal activities. And then Black Lives Matter got really big and that really hit me as a person of color. I had people who I hadn't talked to in like 10 years reach out to me saying like, whoa, I didn't realize you're like the only Black person that I really know. And can I get you lunch? Can I get you dinner? What's your address? I'll Postmate you something. And as cool as that was also really overwhelming because the news was so intense. And then the protests and everything was so intense. And then, you know, my guy is a philosophy minor. He's super intelligent and really likes to challenge things. And he's really challenged me during that time of like, you know, what is going on? What do you think about it? What do you think the ultimate answer is? And I was like, okay, I'm going to let them think about it because I'm going through my own thing right now. But I couldn't escape it. I mean, going to the grocery store, going anywhere in the world, people look at me. They probably think they know exactly how I feel, where I stand. And it's been pretty uncomfortable. I guess that what I'd want to say is that I'm in full support of the same things a lot of people are: ending systemic racism, you know, biases really getting out of the picture, and really just like moving forward as a society with more people of color in better places. I mean, it's just incredible how we haven't moved away from so many things that were back in, I mean, really old times that shouldn't have happened in the first place. So, I don't know. It's definitely been interesting because I can't really put my finger on exactly how I feel at this point with like all of that. Besides that, I think that it's been really nice to have people recognize the possible pain that I felt. I also have to make the statement that my mom is straight out of Africa. She came here from Kenya. I don't have any relatives or any ancestors who were slaves. So I wrote a paper in college, went to U of O, got a degree in public relations. And I wrote a paper about how, like, I'm Black, but I don't really fit in with some of the Blacks. And I'm Black, but I don't totally fit in with the whites. I don't know. It's just really interesting. Back in college, I ended up leading the diversity committee for the School of Journalism and learning that, like, everybody, people of color of all sorts, go through a lot of the same things that Black people go through, just in different ways and for different reasons. It's really interesting. And now that, like, Stop Asian Hate is a hashtag, it's amazing. I think we're just moving in the right direction, and I'm so grateful. I think that it's really important that Arab hate has been a major thing in this country. and Asian hate absolutely has. And now Black Lives Matter is coming to light, which has in the past, which was actually something that my dad and I talked about a lot, because my dad told me, Samira, this Black Lives Matter thing, it's really popular right now, but it's probably not going to last. I've seen this before. I've seen this happen before. I've seen people protest. I've seen some policies change, but at the end of the day, people don't change. They're still taught the same thing. And they're taught the same thing from their families or the people around them, their communities. And I said, I think you're kind of wrong, because now we have social media. And I think social media is bringing people a little bit more together.
I agree.
And he said, I hope you're right. That was one of the last conversations I ever had with my dad, because during the pandemic, he ended up dying of a heart attack, which was totally out of left field for me. That was a whole new experience. Sky, you may have met my dad. I'm not sure. He was at a lot of shows.
I did meet him a few times, and a huge supporter of not only you, but the music scene in general, and an active supporter on our Siege page. Every once in a while, I would post up our video with you singing Possible Obstacles with us at then Hi-Fi for album release. And I would always tag you in it, of course, and give a shout out. And he would be the first one up there, giving love and shouts out to us for even having you on stage and all this. And he and I we'd have to argue about whose pleasure it was to have you on stage, because he'd be like, I'm so thankful that you had her play with. I'm like, no, hold on. We're thankful that she would even play with us, so yeah.
That sounds about right. My dad was totally that guy. He was totally the front row of every show that he could make it to, and really influenced my love for music, actually. He played a lot of music when I was growing up, took me to concerts, took me to jazz festivals, and I didn't really know music that well. I guess not to the degree that I do now, but he really was a huge fan, and he absolutely loved Soul Seed. He actually, I don't know if you can see his playlist on Spotify, but all Soul Seed's albums are on there.
Oh,
and
that's amazing.
We share them a lot. So yeah, my dad was a big deal in my life. And so losing him was really hard. And of course, losing him in the middle of a pandemic when we can't really have a celebration of life, or I couldn't be in the hospital with him because he had a heart attack. Ambulance came, got him, and him and my mom were able to be together. And that means the world to me.
Great.
Because my mom was his favorite person in the world. So it just works out perfectly. But
that's beautiful.
Yeah. It's so crazy too, because the last conversation I had with my dad was still a lesson, and wow, it's not just social media or people hearing about this. It's actually our hearts need to change. And that is not happening. People want that to change, but it's not actually happening.
Easier said than done, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I live with that now, and it's incredible. I'm going through life in that way too, where I'm realizing, shoot, I need to back up. I need to check myself and think about what my dad said about things repeating, things happening. And am I doing that? Am I doing that with myself? How do I change? How do I challenge myself? And through the pandemic, I ended up quitting one of my jobs, my job didn't feel like it was the right place for me. I was doing marketing. Culture didn't really fit me, I think. But, it wasn't necessarily just the people. It was also the job. I think that I went to school for marketing and public relations. So I started doing jobs that were that. And at the end of the day, I realized that that wasn't really for me. I connect with people. I'm a networker.
Same.
I love to help out.
Same.
So I was I need to do something that's very involved with people and not very involved with marketing and getting people to pay attention to me. I want people to come to me. So I quit that job in the middle of a pandemic, and that added on to all of the other things I was going through. I mean, that happened before my dad died. And when I told my dad that I quit, he was like, good for you. He was always supportive. So anyway, pandemic has been really intense because of Black Lives Matter, not playing music, dad dying, adjusting to life, working from home, being at home 24 hours with my partner. And I started reading people's biographies, actually.
Love that. That's one of my hobbies as well. Right? Especially for me, it's especially musicians and athletes, primarily because I've been a musician and athlete most of my life. So I love to hear the backstories of who these people were, how they became who they are, and if they're retired or they've passed on or no longer doing what they do, what that process afterward had been like as well. So I agree with you. That's the knowledge I ingest is usually the most fun are, those biographies, autobiographies and things like that, watching documentaries, as opposed to fantasy shows and stuff like that. It's usually watching documentaries and reading autobiographies and things like that. So I think that's great.
Cool. Yeah. So you feel me.
I do. I super feel you. And this, and just full transparency, because I'm going to bring this up for podcast listeners and YouTubers. By the time you're watching this, this is a pre-recorded episode, and right around the time that DMX had passed on, died of a heart attack complication of a heart attack at 50 years old. And he was one person. I bring it up because it's so recent. He's one person that I thought had a lot of misconceptions about his personality, who he was, his career. And I'd been a big fan of him since middle school. And I dug deep into his backstory when he passed on, which my brother texted me immediately and was like, man, it's kind of sad that it takes somebody passing on like this to get their music back on the front and center, right? Like I remember when Tupac died, I'm 34. So when Tupac died in 96, it was a huge deal for me. I remember it vividly. And I remember him being the most popular artist again overnight. And then and Sublime and Nirvana and all these things growing up, they become the most popular musician after the fact. And it's a cool tribute. Prince was another big one. Bowie. It's a great tribute, but it's almost sad in a way that it takes something so drastic for people to say, oh man, I wish I saw them in concert. I wish I bought their albums earlier. I wish I had heard their music when my friend had told me to check them out, because now I literally don't have the opportunity to do so. And without getting too far off base here, that is something I like about documentaries and autobiographies, is because I like to learn that stuff now while they're kind of like coming up. Like I've done like too much research on like Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber and Beyonce. And I'm not a huge fan of their music, to be perfectly honest, but I'm interested in the human beings that they are and what it takes to be that person. Right. And other musicians as well. And athletes, of course. I'm a super baseball nerd. So even guys that played in the 40s, I'm very interested in their life back then, serving in World War II and then coming back and playing ball professionally and then going out and doing the Vietnam War or something and coming back. It's just phenomenal. So sorry to steal the thunder a little bit. I just that fires me up a little bit, because that's a passion of mine as well.
For sure. And it's so true. I mean, I am so grateful that there are people that I can read their biography and they're still like their early 40s. Like, I don't think that you have to be a certain age to write one or to be relevant in that way. But I do think that you're totally right that unfortunately a lot of people aren't as appreciated until after they pass on.
Absolutely. And something I don't like to use the term regret, and I try not to let regret like infiltrate my life, because I just try to learn from things and, get better. But one thing I regret straight up is not having the foresight first of all, because none of us in Soul Seed knew that Soul Seed would become what Soul Seed did over a decade. That's real life. We were just playing show to show, and 10 years later, we've got this catalog of things to look back on. But the reality is none of us knew what was going to happen. So there was no reason or anticipation for us to document things. Yes, we have social media, but we were late to the game on Instagram. We only got one because, like, why not everyone else is doing it? And I wish. I'm a huge fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, who's an entrepreneur and just a game changer. And one thing that he has done for 20 years is he's basically had a camera crew literally follow him around and document every meeting he has, phone calls, the conversations he has. He's a social media guru is basically how he got put on the scene, and wine as well. So in 2009, 2006, he was saying, buy stock of Facebook, buy stock of Google, buy stock of, this, whatever. And people were like, dude, whatever, like who even knows what those things are? All of a sudden they become what they are, right? He was telling everybody about TikTok 3 years ago and nobody knew what it was. And all of a sudden TikTok is the biggest thing on the planet. And it's not so much that he's predicting things. It's that he has the documentation to show that, and it's not even to pat himself on the back. It's just that, like, look, I took the time to record myself, made a prediction, and some of them blow up in his face, but it's cool that he can go back and say, hey, not only did I tell you so, but I have the documentation to look back on myself and why did I make that decision at that time? And we talked about a lot of things being cyclical, right? And returning and trends, if you will, returning. A lot of those things tend to do so, but why? I think the history part of it is why do they return? And, I have a teenage daughter, and the 90s fashion and stuff is coming back to be cool again. Yeah. And mom and I are sitting there like, oh my God, what is happening, But again, it's just the 60s rock and roll was the thing that I grew up with in high school. You know what I mean? So it's it's just so funny. And one thing I regret is that we did not have the foresight as a band to document more. We don't have a bunch of live video. I mean, we do ish on YouTube, but we've played hundreds of shows, and we have hundreds of hours maybe online. We should have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of online video, and we just frankly don't. And I really wish we had done that. And that's what I love about this podcast now is we can kind of double back a little bit, start having these conversations, relive some fun times and some stories and experiences, document them, revisit it in the next 5 or 10 years. And I think it's going to be really fun to see what comes back.
Really true. I mean, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I don't have any kids now, but I imagine 15 years from now, what that's going to be like.
It is it's very interesting to have the conversations of, and I don't want to dive too much into this. I'll make an episode of my life. I feel like I've lived 4 or 5 lives at this point, honestly, just straight up different people. But I grew up in California. I moved up to Oregon when I was 19. Joined Soul Seed, and the rest is history. But the person that I was in California and the person that everybody in Oregon knows me as are literally different people. They're completely different people. Mindsets, habits, everything is different. And that's been a very intense, conscious movement for myself internally to, shed that skin from who I was growing up in the Bay Area, and just a totally different person to becoming who I actually feel comfortable being, which is an Oregonian. It's a Eugene hippie. It's that's who I feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable being money hungry, living in traffic 5 hours a day to make extra money, buying the big house. And look, most of my friends and a lot of my family do that, and I love them all. It's no hate. It's just not for me. And I just really applaud anybody that's made any life decision, whatever it may be, big or small, that now they feel comfortable in their own skin, more so for doing so. Again, whatever it is. Mine just simply was I got to get out of town after high school, go up to Oregon, check it out. And I never left. And it turned into Soul Seed and my family and everything else. And I'm just so blessed. But, doing anything you can to shed a previous skin, I think that might not be your safe space, I think is so important. And I'm really thrilled that we live in a time now where it's more accepted to do that on any level of where you're at. You know what I mean? It could be anything. And I really appreciate that. So, I'm excited. That's why I'm excited to have you on here. I know that you've been through a lot in this last year, the passing of your father, of course, and, not having work as a musician, and turning to other things. Coincidentally, I was making some notes here. I want to kind of unpack a lot of things that you brought up in the intro here. And we're going to dive deeper into a lot of these things as well as we move on. But specifically, quitting your job during a pandemic. When you said that, I was just like, oh, girl, I get it. So long story short, I won't mention the company. Anybody here that knows, but I won't throw them under the bus. But I work for a local company here in Eugene that I was so excited to work for years and years and years and years and years. They were a pillar of the Eugene community. I grew up idolizing it, and I finally scored a job with this company. I was so pumped up. Long story short, we had management changes, blah, 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 within my first year, and it kind of was a mess. And then COVID hits, and we start working from home. And again, I also love my family, and it's been a blessing to be home more often than not after being on the road more often than not. So I've actually really enjoyed it as well. But I think everybody has some level of cabin fever. And I started realizing that it wasn't the job that I was enjoying as much as I thought I would. It was the people I worked with. It was the fact that I got to leave the office and go visit clients, and I got to have new, interesting conversations every day. I got to meet business owners in Eugene. And like yourself, I got to help people. I got to say, hey, I have a skill set and I work my ass off. How can I do that for you? How can we scratch each other's back? That's what I'm good at. That's what I love to do. It's my passion. That's what was keeping me going when we were at work. Now I'm at home, not visiting people, not seeing my coworkers, only in Zoom meetings all day long. You know what I mean? It just became this monotonous thing. And then I started to resent the work because it wasn't the work that I loved. It was the people and the relationships I was building and maintaining. That's what I love to do. And then I realized that's what I miss about music so much. Of course, I miss being on stage and playing music, but I feel like that's frosting for what we do. People don't notice all the work we do before we get on stage. And I really enjoy the work we do before we get on stage. And I wasn't able to do that once things shut down for the band. And so once you said that, I was just like, oh man, that has been my year and a half. And it still is. I've been unemployed for a while, and I've got side hustles like everybody else, but it's been a really interesting reality for me to quit my job. I quit my job because I wasn't feeling it.
I just thought to say congratulations.
Thank you. And it's so funny because you said that your dad, obviously very supportive, and I've seen that firsthand as well. But you said that it almost wasn't surprising that he supported you because he's Pops, and that's what Pops does.
That's his job.
But when you quit your job, especially during a pandemic, you think like, oh shit, like what the hell am I doing? Like, what am I doing?
I'm not going to lie. He was like the last person I told.
Because you're worried about a negative response. I did the same thing. I talked through it with my family forever, and they gave me the support to do it. And I eventually did, because ultimately I felt like I wasn't getting treated properly for the amount of effort I was exuding, and I'll leave it at that. But the reality is I stepped away as well, knowing that I didn't have a job coming up. I knew, and I felt really, guilty. And I felt like this was a time that like privilege really punched me in the face, because I all of a sudden quit my job, made enough money to just nest egg it for a few months till something else came up. But then I started realizing, like, man, so many people I know, restaurant owners, whatever, musicians, artists, yada, yada. So many people I know got fired. They got furloughed. They got laid off. They didn't leave on their own accord. They got pushed out. And here I am, feeling like, I'm not happy. I'm going to leave. And it was more than that, and I don't regret it now. But at the time, I was kind of like, man, that was kind of not the cool move. I mean, that wasn't appropriate. And then, like you said, your dad came over the top and supported you. And once he supported you, you're like, all right, I feel good about it. Once my parents and once my coworkers and once my good friends that I knew were going to like be in my corner, but not just agree with me because I'm me. Once they started saying like, hey man, you stood up for yourself. How do you feel? And I was like, whoa, that's weird. I've never like done that before. I don't stand up for myself. I stand up for other people. So I now stood up for myself, and it felt good to feel good. And I just had realized that like I don't do that very often. So I also commend you for doing the same thing. And I was scared shitless to do it, to be honest. I straight up was. And then I did it because my gut, my stomach, I couldn't wake up and do the same job. Like I just wasn't feeling it. And one thing my parents have always instilled in me is if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong, right? If your heart's not in it, your soul's not in it. And if your soul's not in it, it's dead to you, and that was the case. And so I also commend you in stepping away, because it's very important that we take our own personal power back when we're able to do so.
Right. And, after doing that, I totally changed my mindset. I mean, I looked back, I did some reflection. I had realized that I graduated high school all the way in 2010. And then from there, I went to college. And then I was in college for like 8 years, not knowing what the heck I was doing, but knew that I had to go to college because that was what had been drilled into my brain. I wasn't ready. I don't think I was ready to go to college when I did.
I want to cut you off really quick because I want to cut you off just for a second because I'm totally, we're on the same page here, which is crazy. I just want to ask you, you said you went to college because that's what you do. I feel exactly the same. My question is, did your parents push that on you? Did your family push that on you? Did your friends push that on you? Or did they not, and you push that on yourself?
I would absolutely say that it was pushed on me from my parents and mostly my mom. I mean, my mom is from a small town or village in Kenya called Matandoni. It's off of Lamu. It's close to Lamu Island, and it's on the east coast of Africa in Kenya. And I mean, she's like, her being in America and having kids, I think that we might have been the first kids born in the United States from somebody from her village.
Really?
I mean,
Wow.
It was a big deal.
Wow.
So, and another way of looking at that, I'm a first generation college student.
Absolutely.
And so that was like my life. You go to school, you go to college. At my high school graduation, I'm pretty sure my mom said, this is cool, but it's not as good as college graduation is going to be. Something along those lines. And so I've always had that, oh my gosh, I have to go to college. And I hope that I don't do the same thing. I hope that when I have kids, I like encourage them to figure out what they want to do. I think that college is fantastic, and I'm super glad I went. Changed my life for sure. That's how I met my band. So I'll tell you guys about that. But I just imagine what it would have been like if I took some time to figure out what I really wanted to do. However, everything worked out. I'm super happy. Life is good.
Isn't that weird?
I went to college.
Isn't that weird? Man, that saying, the classic saying, everything happens for a reason. I live by it, and I absolutely despise it at the same time. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Like, I live by it, but then there's some things that happen and you're just like, nah, that one doesn't work. That one wasn't supposed to happen. I promise you, and I'm with you. Again, I graduated high school in 2005. So 5 years before you, in California. And the reality is I didn't want to go to a California state school, or university, whatever, college in California, because the reality is who I was at the time, I would have been in the party scene. I was worried that I was going to get like heavy into drugs and alcohol like everybody else did and partying. It's California, dude. It's, the Cali life. I mean, I was wrapped up in it, and I was really worried about that. So I got into a couple state schools, but my buddies and I took a trip to Eugene, Oregon, which I didn't even know existed before 2007, which is hilarious, right? Yeah. So we took a trip up here because we had some good friends we graduated with that went to U of O right out of high school. They said, hey, come up, stay with us. We'll show you around town if it's cool. put in an application. If not, then go somewhere else. We're like, all right, no big deal. Loved Eugene. It was phenomenal. We went to a concert up in Portland for Xavier Rudd, who's my favorite musician ever. And that weekend should have changed my life. We went home. We both applied. We all applied to U of O. Some of us got in, some of us didn't. We went to Lane. We went to U of O. The rest is history. But I basically went to college as well because that's what you do. Now,
yeah,
the difference is my parents did not push me to go to college. They encouraged me to go because they did not go to college. They went to vocational schools. You know, my dad was a contractor. My mom was a nurse. So they went to vocational schools, but they didn't go to straight up college, you know?
Right.
And my brother would eventually go to Chico, but he's 2 years before me. So I'm like the front runner in the family making it happen. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. All my friends were better athletes, or they were smarter in school, or they were going to Cal Berkeley and Stanford and stuff. And I was going to like whatever state would take me. And I regret going to college the way that I went. I don't regret going to college overall, but I regret going the way that I went because I was not, you know, I was one of those guys that did like 6 years and I did like 5 majors. You know,
yeah,
it's like
I changed my major like 8 times.
Oh, it's stupid. You know, so people are like, hey, what do you go to school for? I'm like, what year? You know, it's
yeah,
like,
ask me that.
it's so silly. And so, and then ultimately, I stopped a few, like 33 credits short, because in 2013, Soul Seed hit the road for good. And we were just going to go on a tour and see what happens. And 10 years later, we're still doing it. So again, blessing, and it happened for a reason, and I'm stoked on it. But like, why did I go to school for 6 years and kind of just rack up bills and everything else? I mean, like, one of the biggest accomplishments in my life was paying off my student loans. The fact that I'm one of the few people my age in their mid 30s that doesn't have thousands of dollars in student loans is a super win. So whenever I'm feeling down, I think about that. I'm like, man, I could be downer, you know, but it's really interesting when people our age, and now look, I mean, I've got a high schooler who's crushing it. She's fucking phenomenal, way better than mom and dad in school. And I'm so proud of her, but now she's thinking about college. And it's like, we encourage her, but I've been so careful to not be like, you must go to school. You must go to these schools. Like, oh, you want to go to that one? What about this one? You know, it's like, we're not doing that at all. It's like, yo, if you get into somewhere that's above pay grade, I will make it happen because it's your dream, you know? And I just want to be conscious of that this is her story. This is not my story. All we can do is react to what mom and I did growing up and turn it into the parental side of things and try to encourage and influence best that we can, but be careful. And I think what a lot of parents do, and not necessarily consciously always, your mom is looking out for the best of you, right? I mean, coming from Kenya and doing what she did is phenomenal just to get here, just to have you being successful in any realm. Now to go to college, it's a huge deal. And I commend her for that. And the pressures of immigrant families coming over here is just so immense. And I really commend her for doing that. And I just really want to make sure that we're setting the example of, you know, do what you got to do. And we're here to support you best you can. And I won't let you sink, you know, but I'm also not going to swim for you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's
kind
important.
of my dad's approach, which was really inviting. I mean, if I wasn't feeling very good about a class or something, I felt super open calling my dad and being like, I don't know if this is for me.
Love that.
And then we talk about it. It was really cool. I remember being in my car at the Lane Community College parking lot, calling him even though he was at work and just being like, I just needed to talk to you right now because I'm just not sure if this is for me, you know. And he's like, take a term off, girl. And I was like, I can take a term off? Like, I needed to hear that from him.
That's so awesome. So was your mom, or is your mom more the stickler, you know, the driver, and dad is, you know, was kind of more of that, you know, supportive wing of you're feeling down? Cause it's reverse for me. My mom is that person that I can, and I love both my parents equally, but my mom is definitely that person that like, I'm feeling down, or I'm like, Mom, I'm really like, I'm not doing well. Something's off. My chi is out. Like, I've made some bad decisions, or life's coming at me hard. Like, what the hell am I going to do? I call my mom and we have like a reasonable conversation. She picks me back up. And then I talk to dad for the kick in the ass. You know what I mean? Like, is it similar for you, but reversed? Is that what I'm picking up?
totally reverse. I mean, think about it. My parents had totally different backgrounds. My mom, Kenyan. She comes from a Muslim culture. And my dad was a white. He's American. He had a degree in sociology.
Where's he from? Where your dad from?
My dad?
Yeah, where did he grow up?
L.A.
L.A., okay. Go ahead.
Alhambra.
Okay.
Went to Alhambra High. So that area. So that's my other home besides Eugene is Pasadena, California. I love it down there. But anyway, yeah. That's my chair, by the way, everybody. But yeah, really, my parents had two totally different backgrounds. And my mom came from a background of you say it how it is. You don't leave anything out. You're not doing good unless you're really doing good. And she like really, I think, thrived off of that. And my dad was like the total opposite. My dad was like, I love you no matter what, like whatever. It was actually really interesting growing up too, because my mom's Muslim and then my dad was like atheist. And so my mom would use this tactic of fear, kind of like, don't do this or this is going to happen. And my dad would be like, if you do this, it's going to be bad. And it was like so much more relatable for me. Yeah. I'm never going to forget, like, when I was like in middle school or something, and my mom was like, if you have sex before marriage, you'll go to hell. And one day I was driving with my dad. We used to pick him up because my sister, my dad, and I all used to share a car. And I picked him up from work one day, and he was like, Samira, let me tell you something. I just want to let you know I wouldn't have a job without drugs and alcohol. So if you ever decide that you're going to drink, just call me. I get it. I'm down to pick you up. I don't care. I get it. And also, if you decide to have sex, be safe, because it's either going to be, a few moments of pleasure. What did he say? He said, a few moments of pleasure is not worth not being safe about it. Something like that.
Fair.
And it was like, oh, what the hell is pleasure? Like, I just didn't get it. And I was like, okay, well, I believe him because he doesn't seem to lie to me anyway. But I never believed what my mom said because I wasn't I wasn't religious. So it wasn't something that I was like really taking to heart, something I could relate with. But my dad was relatable to me because he was real. I mean, no offense to anybody, but it felt more real when my dad would propose these things to me that had to do with what my experience could be at this life rather than what would happen after my life.
That is so, oh man. Your dad was a wonderful person. Here's the thing. So again, we have the same, obviously different situations, very similar parenting styles, but reversed, right? Your mom is my dad and my mom is your dad kind of a thing. But it was the same thing. Like I could talk to my dad. He wouldn't shut me down or like, none of this going to hell. We were, I don't know about atheists, but my mom is extremely spiritual. Like talk to the universe, karma runs everything, spiritual. My dad was like, I had to wear a suit every day when I was a kid to go to Catholic school. So I stopped doing that when I was 13 and I will never, ever, ever go to church again. You won't either. It was one of those things. So I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it was interesting growing up because my mom would always kind of, again, put it out to the universe, like do the right things will happen to you, blah, blah. And my dad was just like, look, dude, if you screw up, you're going to get your ass kicked. Like it's black and white, There's no middle ground. It was like, it's either wrong or it's right. If you do something wrong, you're going to have consequences. If you do something right, you'll be rewarded. And my mom was all gray area, and it was just very interesting to have that dynamic, which it sounds like you did as well. And as I grow into my own person, and now, I'm raising a family and things, I think of the same things. And I think it's so important that you take as much of each of those people, which I'm sure you do, as their child, you take as much of each of them as you possibly can. Like, I feel like I'm really 50-50, my mom and my dad. And I think like the dad side, and Soul Seed calls me dad, because when I turn on like the business side of things, like, all right, guys, we got shit to do. Like, yes, we're going to have fun and party on stage, but there's, 21 other hours in the day that we need to get something done. And when I turn that on in my head, like I become my dad, and then when it's like lovey-dovey, pick people up when they're feeling down, having an open ear, a shoulder to cry on, big bear hugs when people need them, encouraging, big smile, inviting, that's my mom. And I think it's so important that you kind of have as much like dynamic within yourself as well, because you don't want to be too hard or too soft. And I think that like it's been really important for me to navigate that as best that I possibly can. And it's so interesting. Again, you and I have known each other for quite a while now, and we've spent a lot of time together, but primarily strictly in the music world. And that's what I am loving about this podcast. And that's exactly why we started this, because it's the conversations. And, I didn't think for one moment you and I would have similar stories like this. It's just funny that it's coming out like that, but it's really interesting. Because I feel like it'll come out more often than not when I have these conversations. And I think that, it's interesting to bounce things off of each other like that and ever grow forward. So I appreciate it. And it's been amazing to have you share the story of your parents. And again, kudos to your mom. I mean, doing what she's got to do to provide for the family, and your dad as well. I mean, look, coming out from LA, I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area, so I'm 6 hours north, but I've spent, in my opinion, too much time in Los Angeles. It's not really for me, but the LA lifestyle is its own beast as well. So,
well, to add on to that, he actually went straight to Vietnam after graduating high school, and became a medic in the Army there. He was actually a chief medic officer.
Wow.
And then he came back, and he ended up traveling the world, which is how he met my mom, which
Phenomenal.
is an incredible story. And where he got onto a bus, I think he was kind of late. I actually have his journal now, so I can read it. And there was one seat left, and it was next to my mom.
Oh,
And they met, and it's pretty incredible. But he ended up, after going to the Army, coming back, going to Cal State LA, getting a degree in sociology, and then doing some social work, and then realizing, maybe I should do nursing because I love to travel. So he got a degree in nursing and became an ICU nurse. And then he would take many months at a time to go travel the world. And so
phenomenal.
Very, very well. I mean, he was such a peace and love hippie guy on Venice Beach. That was like his growing up. If he talks about LA, that's like what it is. Or sneaking into a Anaheim game with his friends.
Nice.
Growing up. Yeah. He had some great stories. And one of his best friends actually lives here in the area. So we stay in touch. We go to football games together. Good. My dad was a huge sports dude. So that was kind of like his excuse to travel after he retired, was he followed the Ducks and went to all their away football games and had season tickets most of my life growing up. And now I'm hoping to score those. The season didn't happen, so we got paid back for them. But I'm like, I might as well just take my dad's season tickets.
Absolutely.
And, that was a big part of my life. But in going to the football games, we'd also see other parts of the country. And one of the last places that I went to with him was actually the Michigan State game in 2015, I think it was, where we ended up going over to the Detroit Jazz Festival. Oh,
wow. Oh, so you went to Michigan to see the game. So Michigan State is in East Lansing, correct?
Yeah, it's in Lansing.
Okay. Awesome. Go ahead.
You're good.
Football or sports in general is kind of my thing. Don't get me carried away on sports, please. Go ahead.
Very cool. They have bomb dairy. It was like we had chocolate cheese. We walked into this place on campus, and I was like, Dad, they have your two favorite things, chocolate cheese. And he's like, why did you tell me that? Now I have to get it.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Cool. So you went to the Detroit Jazz Fest as well? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we went to the Detroit Jazz Fest. Saw Pat Metheny.
Wow.
It was actually all free too, which I thought was pretty cool.
Beautiful.
Just walk in. And they were incredible. I'm pretty sure Ron Carter was playing bass for one of the trios, and he's like really up there now, and he killed it. It was amazing. And that was right after I had started playing music. It was literally the summer I started playing music and had just finished, I think, 2 terms of jazz combos over at Lane Community College when I was just learning about jazz.
So what?
So it was like
What year is that roughly? Just to paint a
2015.
picture. 2015. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So what is that? 6 years ago now.
Happens quick, huh?
Wow. But yeah, that was really cool. And one of the most, I mean, it was one of my favorite trips I definitely have taken, but basically because of like how I was just getting into music and now I'm going to this jazz festival. So that was really cool. And
That's amazing.
also with my dad, who we ended up going to a few MLB games, guys. So you're probably into that. We went to see the Cleveland Tigers, I think they're called.
Cleveland Indians.
Oh, Cleveland Indians.
But Detroit Tigers probably.
Detroit Tigers we went to. And then we also went to the team in Pennsylvania.
Philadelphia Phillies or Pittsburgh Pirates.
I think we went to the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Beautiful.
Yeah, because we went to Pittsburgh. So yeah, we went to the Pirates. So like we went to this football game, went to the jazz festival, went to 3 baseball games.
I wish I was on that trip. That's literally what I want to do, Samira. Straight up. That's what I want to do. I want to travel. I want to see super dope, amazing music festivals. And then I want to go to baseball games and football games. One of my dreams, straight up since I was a little bitty kid, is to go to all of the baseball stadiums in the country.
That was my dad's dream.
I wish I got more time with your dad. The more that you talk about him, I'm just like, dude, that's my homie. That's what's
you guys would have been best friends. So
it's awesome.
Which MLB stadiums have you been to?
Oh man. Boy, I've been quite a few. Some of my favorites. So I grew up in the Bay Area. So Candlestick, which is the old Giant Stadium, is where I grew up going to games. And then it became AT&T, Pac Bell Park, whatever. So the new Giant Stadium for sure. The LA Dodger Stadium. Wrigley Field's got to be my favorite that I've been to though. Wrigley Field in Chicago, where the Cubs play, is just a phenomenal stadium. It's historical. The franchise has been there for, 110 years. They have the ivy. It's real ivy that grows out on a brick wall out on the outfield wall. They also, if people can hit a home run that far, they can actually hit it onto Waveland Avenue, which is a legit street that drives by outside of the stadium and stuff. People have posted up stadium chairs on the roof across the street so that you can actually like sit up on the street, across the street on a roof and look down into the stadium and stuff. And so that's kind of my jam, but there's a few others, historic ones I haven't been to yet. Fenway Park, where the Red Sox play, is a big one. I wish I made Old Yankee Stadium. Again, just the history.
I've been to
Fenway. Yeah, it's amazing. The big wall, and
I haven't been to Wrigley, so
it's beautiful. There. We're even. Yeah. Well, I really wish I got more time with your dad, because it's just again, music, sports. That's my jam. And you mentioned it. I mean, let's talk about some of your musical background and really kind of what brought us together ultimately, is your time with Soul Vibes, Soul Vibrator. But your love for music started before that. So kind of take me from, were you singing as a younger person in the living room, doing the thing as a kid? Did you have any formal training? How did you kind of get started singing specifically? Because that's what I know you as. And then if you play other instruments and things, how you got that going as well. And then take me from how you started Soul Vibes, and then let's get into Sage Crow, because I'm fired up on that.
So I definitely have, I don't know how it started. We listened to a lot of Whitney Houston growing up, and I picked up on her music, would sing it at the top of my lungs. My mom bumped
Whitney Houston. I love me some Whitney. Go ahead.
Right? Soul Vibrator does a cover now, and I'm so stoked about it. But I just sang. I remember being in 1st or 2nd grade and having a little band with my sister and our best friend Kayla, And we were called LBL because it was like the initials of our last names. And my sister and I have the same last name. So it was LBL. And I would write all the songs and we'd perform them every time Kayla's parents came to pick her up or something. It was like so ridiculous, but I was always like the lead, you know, I was always like, you guys over there. And
obviously.
I'm front. And it was just like, so now that I think about it, classic me, but
makes sense.
Front woman vibes.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically that was like what I used to do all the time. And then I'd say that for as long as I can remember, I've been busting out into song. My mom does it all the time. My mom's a great singer. I think that she's fantastic. I remember taking swim lessons when I was really young at Sheldon Pool, and my mom singing while she was like getting me dressed, and people just saying, "You have an amazing voice." And
that's awesome.
It's great. I love singing with my mom too. Like, it is so fun. But
have you ever done any formal recording or performances with your mom?
No, my mom does not think she's a good singer. So that's
classic.
I know.
Isn't that classic? So many people just like, oh, not me. And you're like, excuse me? Like, let me be the judge of that. Okay, Mom? Jeez.
Yes, stop.
You're amazing. Just sing, all right?
She's amazing. She's amazing all around. But like that is something that is like, we love to drive and listen to music and we sing and it's great. And so I've always written lyrics and sang. And then probably, I remember being in like 4th grade or something, learning that song, My Country 'Tis of Thee. And I remember loving to sing. And I was like, okay, I love to sing. And, you know, that was hard for my mom. She didn't want me to grow up thinking I was just going to be a singer, because that was like not what she like really valued at the time. And I really don't want to like act like my mom's a bad person. She's my best friend. But like, it was definitely a culture thing growing up. Like the culture change or the culture thing was like really rough for both of us because, you know, that was very unnatural. It wasn't what she had dreamed of. I had so many dreams of what it's going to be like when I have a kid. And now I'm like, oh my God, I need to remember what happened to my mom. But, you know, at this point, now that I'm the age that I am and she's the age she is, like, we just are so over all of that. And we're literally like, I probably talked to her like 4 times today and then went over to her house.
That's
so
awesome.
Like, she's my number one person.
Literally. So you and I have been trying to link this up, and we've been very busy, obviously, to get this interview going on and stuff in the recording. We've talked 3 or 4 times probably to set this up. Literally every single time I talk to you, it's something with, I'm either on my way to my mom's, I'm skiing with my mom, I'm talking to my mom. And you know what? That is such an incredible blessing that you have, that your mom is close and that you can see her and talk to her often. My parents are 4 hours away in Northern California, and it's only 4 hours. But with the pandemic and everything else going on, it just like, I can't just scoot down there and see him. And it's like, it's literally, you know, it's only 4 hours. And it really, my life for 10 years was driving 8 hours a day. So really a 4-hour drive to see my parents is not a big deal, but it's so much more weight now because they're not. My mother-in-law is in town here, which is great. So we see her pretty often, but my parents are not. And I, you know, haven't seen them in a year and a half basically. And it's like, I talk to them often and we're close and everything else, but it's wild. Like it, not to jump back on the quarantine train, but it's just like that stuff has been some of the hardest to deal with. I've gotten used to everything else. I've gotten used to being home. I've gotten used to not having a job. I've gotten used to not hugging anybody for a year and a half. I've gotten used to not having friends. Like that's all okay for me. Like not being able to see my parents when I just want to is, it's really tough. It's been really tough. So I'm glad. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you that you have that opportunity with your mom.
Yeah. And I mean, I extra value that now that my dad is gone, but even before my dad was gone, my parents, I mean, they're both like, I get in my car and I put on my AirPods and I either call mom or I call dad.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I don't know. We just have such a like friendly relationship. I do with both of them. They're my best friends and I'm theirs. And I remember my dad, I like was looking for our messages and he would tell me literally everything. And then he'd be like, is this appropriate? Maybe I shouldn't be talking to my daughter, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, if you can't talk to me, then you shouldn't be talking to anyone else, man.
You're like, Pops, I got you, Pops. It's cool. Your secret's safe with me. That's good. Yeah, my mom and I are like that too.
I mean, I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but I've always kind of been bossy, maybe you could say, but maybe a little bit of a know-it-all. I need to learn how to like back off a little bit on that. But I probably the last few years have felt a lot more open about maybe talking to my parents about things that worry me or I have concerns about. And I would say that probably for the last year of my dad's life, I was really on his case a ton. The poor guy. He was getting a new car. My dad was like in his 70s, 74. And I was like, listen, Dad, stoked for you to get a new car. Not going to lie. I think that you should get the car with all the bells and whistles because you're getting up there. And his argument was like, I've been driving for over 40 years, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, that's the problem. It was so funny. Anyway, my dad had an incident with his car. The only person he told was me. And it's really interesting because I'm the one that said, I have concerns. I'm the one that said, listen to me before you hear from the insurance agent. But then he only told me about what happened with him in his car.
Isn't that interesting how that goes? That again, coming back to the theme here of the conversation is the cyclical nature of things. Isn't it interesting? The older that we get, we're within 5 years or so of each other. And it's really interesting to now, like I've been doing that with my mom recently as well. Like my mom calls me for advice. Mm-hmm. She's like, hey, Sky, I got this thing. My parents are retired. They live in the country. Like they stay away from people on purpose, but they still got like life stuff. And my mom's like, hey, I got this thing. And like, I can't talk to your father about it. Like, blah, 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 I'm going to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, like what's up? And it's crazy because like, of course I go to my mom for advice, but it's almost more often these days that she comes to me. And just as you said, and I'm going to be a little bit more intense about it, I'm like, no bullshit with my mom. I'm like, first of all, Ma, nobody's getting any younger. Okay. Yeah. Secondly, you've worked your ass off to provide for us kids and dad. And they live on a huge, beautiful piece of property. Like you've worked your ass off to provide for everybody but yourself. Like go do stuff. If you want to travel, you want to go see a show, you want to eat ice cream for dinner, like it's okay. Yeah. You want to get another couple of chickens for the ranch or buy plants for the house, like do it. It's okay to do. And she almost like, it's interesting because I'm realizing she needs permission. It's weird. It's like she needs permission, not from somebody, but it's like somebody needs to tell her it's okay that she does things for herself, that she's okay. And it's almost like your dad with the car situation. It's like, oh God, who am I going to talk to? Like, Samira will keep it locked and I can trust her. It's almost like, well, Sky, I can talk to Sky about things and he's going to shoot straight, but he's also going to like, tell me how it is. And there's been a couple of times recently, even during the pandemic and stuff, she does home health and animal watching and things like that for people in the country. And she's had some interesting situations and she's like, oh, Sky got this and this. I'm like, Ma, you're undercutting yourself. You're not charging people enough, or people are taking advantage of you, or, like you can't do that. You're too nice to not be, a hard ass. Sometimes people will take advantage of you. And it took time after time after time of her doing that to realize finally she called me the other day and was like, Sky, I just want to say thank you for, theoretically slapping me around a little bit and kind of being like, hey, like, put me in my place a little and made me stick up for myself. I finally did it. It was terrible. My stomach was in knots. I felt horrible. And after I did it, I felt like I had my own power for the first time in maybe ever. She's 60 and I'm like, Ma, like that is what's up. Yeah. You don't need to be a mean, rude person to be, in charge of your own power, you know? And I think once, you know, I have those conversations with her, it reflects back onto myself. So now all of a sudden, now I'm thinking about her for my own situations, right? Like each one teach one, you know, I teach somebody something, it comes back on myself. And it's been a very interesting relationship. And I'm glad we're sharing this because I don't talk about this very often with my family because I just don't. And again, we have a lot of similarities in very different life situations, you and I. But it's been interesting to bring this up with you because, you know, I think again, our folks are very the same, and it's interesting to talk to somebody that can relate.
Super relatable. I mean, when I think about this stuff, I think about integrity and what does that mean?
100%.
Feeling confident with your own choice and, you know, not really caring what someone else thinks or feels or whatever, just kind of living for yourself, which is really hard to do.
So hard.
I mean, I can't imagine feeling like taking care of other people for a majority of my life or a good portion of my life. And now what do I do?
Same.
So good for your mom. I love that you guys have that connection.
Yeah.
And I'd say my mom and I have that too. And it's really great. I mean, I feel super good about that.
That's awesome. Well, I'm happy. I'm happy for you as well. And I'm stoked that your dad and you got to get those travels in. Something I haven't done with my parents yet. You know, my dad just worked, you know, basically 24/7 my entire life, still does. You know, he's programmed. He wakes up with the sun. He goes to bed with the sun. He works all day long. I mean, he's just an absolute machine. And we wouldn't have what we have without him. So I'm just so thankful, but he's a cut from an old cloth. I'll put it that way. They don't make him like him anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my mom worked her ass off too. And the same thing. But now she's at the point of her life where she's like, you know what? It'd be kind of cool to like go to Oregon and see Sky, or go to, you know, my brother still lives in Central California. So go down and see Riley, or, you know, we brought her up here for a concert before the pandemic 2 years ago, and she's seen a bunch of Soul Seed shows, of course, and stuff. But I have a big, I know she listens to these podcasts, so I'm not going to spill the beans, but I have a super fun plan for her on one of her upcoming birthdays that I've been working on for a few years, actually. So it'll be fun. But really what I want to do is I want to travel, because I've had the absolute blessing, privilege, honor, you know, all these terms to travel. And I never would have without Soul Seed. And I fell into it. And now that I've been to, you know, almost every state in the entire country, including Hawaii, and all these cities, and met people from all over the world because of this. It's absolutely changed my life. And I've grown more in the last 5 or 7 years than the previous 25. I mean, no doubt about it. And so much of that has been traveling, being uncomfortable, you know, being out of my comfort zone, talking to strangers literally all the time. And putting yourself out there and just like, hey, this is me, as vulnerable as I could possibly be for 3 or 4 hours a night, take it or leave it. And thankfully, for the most part, it's been positive reception. But I do want to talk more about your musical situation. So you grow up, you're singing, you know, LBL, making fire hits, right? So it's basically like Destiny's Child, LBL, right? That's what I'm picking up. So you're making fire hits, and then you get through high school, and you're in Eugene, you're in college, and you meet the guys. So take me through meeting and connecting with Soul Vibes, and then jump into Sage Grow.
So Soul Vibrator, like literally the love of my life. Love Soul Vibrator. I actually had been in like a relationship and going to school, and then we broke up, and he moved away. And I had a friend who did jazz combos at Lane, and he was like, Samira, you need to do jazz combos. And I was like, what am I going to do in jazz combos? And he's like, we need more singers. So, okay, sure, I'll sign up. So I signed up. First day of class, we like all sat in a circle, talked about like our instruments, what we did. And this one guy was like, oh, I'm a piano player, blah, blah, blah. And I told my friend Kirk, I was like, Kirk, who's that guy? He's like, I don't know, piano player. And I was like, I need to know who he is. I have like this weird attraction to him. Like, I need to know him. And he's like, you're so weird, Samira. And I remember like calling one of my friends after that class, Monica. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's this guy in my class. The weirdest thing happened to me when he spoke. Like, I felt like this need to get to know him. And she's like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, but don't worry, I'm going to make it happen because I've got game. Anyway, long story short, he ended up being in my combo playing the drums. And I liked this guy so much. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really like him. And I saw all these posters for this band called Soul Vibrator. And I was like, I'm going to go to one of those concerts because some of the people in my jazz combos class were in it. I was like, maybe the guy I like will be there. And I had finally learned his name after we were in a combo together, and it was Alex. And so I was like, okay, maybe Alex will be at one of their shows. And so I started going to like all their shows, and I was like, dang, this guy does not go to any of their shows, but their shows are really good. So I'm going to keep going. And it was like spring break. The term was over, and I went to the big trampoline park with some friends. And after we were jumping around, we were like, what should we do now? And I was like, well, it's spring break. I have the next 5 days off. Was a barista at Starbucks at the time. And I was like, Soul Vibrator is playing in Florence. I think I'd be down to go. And one of my friends was like, I'll go with you. And I was like, okay, cool. So the concert had already started. We're in Eugene. I'm like, whatever, let's go. It's spring break. And we go out there. And the concert's going on. They take a break. My friend tells me, you know, I'm not really feeling it. I want to go back to Eugene. And I was like, yo, I have the next 5 days off. I kind of knew one of the people there. And I was like, I'm going to see if I can just like.
You're like, I am feeling it. So.
You what?
You were telling your friend, you're like, well, I am feeling it. So yeah, I think I'm going to hang.
And so I asked someone in the band if I could like hang with them, and he was like, you're gonna have to ask Braden, he's the guitar player, and we're all staying at his parents' condo. And I was like, okay. So during the break I walked up to Braden and was like, hey, nice music, love you guys. And he was like, cool, thanks. And I was like, I'm Samira, can I like go on the rest of your tour with you guys? I was like, can I crash with you? That's what happened. And he was like, yeah, sure. I was like, okay. So then I ended up meeting the whole band and like hanging out with them, listening to their music. We went back to Braden's parents' condo. I slept on the floor in some random place. And in the morning, it was like 6 a.m. I woke up so early. I was like, shoot, I got to call my dad. So I called my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, just want to let you know, I don't have my car with me, but I'm out in Florence with a bunch of guys that I don't really know that well. They're all in a band. And I think I'm just going to go on the rest of their tour with them, which I think is up the rest of the Oregon coast. And he was like, yeah, girl, live it up. Like, and I was like, what? He was like,
like, wait. Are you concerned? Like, let's be concerned first and then support.
Like, that's awesome. Like, I don't remember him being concerned whatsoever.
That's so funny.
Like, thanks for letting me know. That is so cool. I hope you have a great time.
God, classic.
I know, it was so classic my dad. And my mom was in Kenya at the time. So it was like, okay, I don't have to tell her because she would have a heart attack. And then went on the rest of their tour with them. We jammed on the beach. Lead singer, guitarist Zev was like going out of town for the next couple shows. And I guess that they had a meeting and decided like maybe Samira should play with us.
Whoa.
And learn Zev's parts. And they came to me with this. Oh, yeah. I also want to add, since my mom was in Kenya, I had her SUV and I was driving it a lot. And they all like were taking several cars to gigs. And I was like, yo, you guys, I have an SUV. Let me drive you around.
That's so good.
And so like that was another thing that I did a lot. And like we played at fair. Well, they played at fair and I ended up being able to go and stuff because I was like driving them all the time. So that was like my first country fair too.
I love that. That's such a cool story. And they knew that you sang because of the group that half of them were in. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, some of them were in jazz combos. So like they had seen me, but I didn't actually know them yet. So it's kind of funny because I went to their concerts hoping to run into Alex. And then he was never there, but I ended up really digging the music. And then going to their shows anyway. And then, yeah, that was like the beginning of Soul Vibrator for me.
That's so awesome. And of course, you know, Soul Vibes then, you know, fast forward, I mean, Soul Vibes becomes one of the biggest bands in Eugene, and you guys are playing alongside us. Specifically, you know, I ended up working with, well, Chuck became, you know, my little brother, and Braden too early on, and worked closely with the guys to book them shows and help them kind of, you know, get in around town and get in on some bigger shows. And I remember now it's an annual thing that both of us, obviously outside of quarantine, both of us play at the Hot Valley stage for the Whitaker Block Party. So anybody in Eugene that's aware with the Whitaker Block Party, we play at Hot Valley. And basically a few years ago, I was like, yo, we got to get Soul Vibes to play before Soul Seed. I mean, they're going to get it, they're going to get it cracking, and we can vibe off that energy. And sure enough, that's what we did. So that's awesome. And, you know, they've obviously branched off to do many other kind of side projects, and also, you know, funk nights in Eugene and things like that. And that's kind of maybe its own podcast that I'll have with Chuck on a bunch of that stuff. But I'm so glad that connection was made, because, you know, I think that they had a really great thing going on. You added such a dynamic presence when you became part of the group. And it's not just your singing, it's your stage energy. You know, again, like a lot of people talk to me about shows, and I'm the didgeridoo keyboard guy, you know, rapper and stuff like that. But a lot of people are like, dude, your stage energy is like, it adds so much to the thing. And it's so funny because, like, when I watch videos, like, I get it. I watch it and I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I am extra hyped. But in the moment, and maybe you feel like this, in the moment, I never think to myself, like, okay, bring the energy, like harness the power and, you know, like, you know, Power Rangers this out to the crowd. Like, that's never what happens. You transform when you're on stage, you know, quite a bit. And I've watched you over the years do that, and you did it, you know, with us, which we'll get to in a second. But I'm so glad, and that the serendipity of the connection with you chasing down Alex, but finding Soul Vibes, jumping on the bus, providing the bus, and then becoming an integral part, you know, front person of one of the biggest bands in Eugene, and a big part of the college music scene is huge. So, you know, well done. And I'm really proud of you for doing that. And that has obviously blossomed into another project as well.
Yeah. So basically, from working with Soul Vibrator, I got really established into the music scene and met Shay Hardy, who puts on the Mardi Gras every year in Eugene.
Shouts out to Shay. Big up.
Incredible Studio 541. She owns and operates, and asked me to be a part of the Studio 541 band that she was putting together for Tokes and Treats, which Soul Vibrator also played at in 2019.
Yep.
And so we got this big band together, a bunch of incredible musicians, and we played this, what I thought was a pretty amazing show. The music, I feel like the way that we all wrote it. And I mean, they had kind of had Sage Crow has been around for a while, but then we had Studio 541, which was a bunch of Sage Crow members and then extras. And now we've kind of walked it down to another group of, like, I think 9 of us or something, which is now called Sage Crow the Flock. And that's like another project of mine that I'm doing that I really love, because I get to work with musicians that I don't feel qualified to work with. I mean, it's just like incredible. I'm so inspired by each and every one of them.
That's awesome. The lineup is insane. That group is so incredibly talented.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And like, it's just like opened up a whole new thing for me, because something that's always been a part of me is like improv. Like, I love improv. That's where I met my best friend, Monica, at Lane Community College in our improv class. But musical improv is like a big thing for me. I'm the kind of person that, like, I just come up with lyrics sitting there and then remember them or record myself, and it becomes a song. And like, disclosure, I didn't mention this earlier, but like, that guy, Alex, that I had a huge crush on back in jazz school, we've now been together for over 5 years. He's my partner.
Got him.
He's an incredible musician, and he is like really like, people see me on stage. I've got a lot of energy, yada, yada. But like, I feel like I have so much support from him to like lock things down and to like really learn things. He's like super music theory. He's got all of that down. And I really, like, I'm not saying that it's awful, but I don't. And so he practices with me. He practices with me with Soul Vibrator, with Sage Crow, with stuff that I've done with Play-Doh and Max, and like anyone else that, I mean, I'm trying to think of, but when I do projects, like he is like in the background of almost every single one.
That's really special.
Helping me with rhythm, helping me with sound, helping me. I mean, he plays keys and coming up with ideas. I mean, I'm so freaking grateful. But yeah, so anyway, Sage Crow has been super cool. I'm really, really excited to see where we go with that. I've been able to do more improv with writing our songs with them than I probably have with Soul Vibrator. And a big part of that is I don't really know what my creativity is yet. Like, I have a lot of like gospel soul within me. I think that's what I really bring to Soul Vibrator. The boys are freaking incredible. Like, they write so many of the lyrics, so much of the music, and I learn a lot of it. And I like to say that like it's just kind of like the icing on the cake, the cherry on top. Like, this is cool. They've got it all together. They've got it all figured out, and then they fill me in on it. And I actually like that a lot. But with Sage Crow, I've been able to do a lot more improv with things.
Nice. And you get to find your voice. That's that's powerful. It's hard to do too. I mean, my previous group before Soul Seed was Simplistic here in town. And I was 19, 20, 21 in that group. And I was the front MC, the only lyricist. And I was just rapping for 3 hours straight every night because I didn't know you took breaks. And then I met Soul Seed, and Soul Seed became like a band, you know, and Simplistic, like we played music and made, I thought, some great songs, but Soul Seed then became like the actual band that, you know, you hear about and you aspire to be. And we started touring and playing with people and, you know, opening up the stage to other musicians like Soul Vibes early on, Max and Play-Doh, as you mentioned as well, a lot of these Eugene names. And I don't want to get too much into Eugene connection just because we have a lot of people listening who have no idea, but I do want to give a shout out to this lineup in Sage Crow, the Flock. Again, Sage Crow's been around a while. Sage Crow, the Flock is the kind of current edition.
Right.
And I know that you want to give a shout out to a special individual. So Michael K, who's been an incredible contributor to the Eugene music scene in many realms, is one of the lead MCs. Rati, M5, Matt Calkins, Sage, Dorian, Ben, Jorah, and John. Soul Seed's played with pretty much each of those musicians. Matt Calkins specifically quite a bit. He's played with us a ton. And Michael K was putting on some industry nights before the quarantine went down, which I so appreciated because I wanted to do that for a few years and open it up to like a forum for local musicians. And maybe when things clear up, he and I can connect and redo that. But I was also running reggae nights in town, which is a whole nother thing, plus doing Soul Seed, plus booking for other bands, like putting, you know, Soul Vibrator and other groups on tour. So I wasn't able to do the industry nights, but Michael K did those. I had a great conversation with Jorah one night for like an hour at one of those things. And obviously the rest of those guys have been playing, you know, music in town for forever. Love what Marcus is doing, M5. And I want you to take a few minutes here on your go, Rati.
Oh yeah, no, Rati D is a huge inspiration to me. Her energy, her rhythm, the way that she can sing and can rap. She's from Zimbabwe. I mean, she's really incredible. And I just feel so lucky to have the friendship that I have with her. Actually, kind of a funny story with that one is So I mentioned earlier that I went to school at the School of Journalism, have a degree in public relations, that naturally had a lot of graphic design courses. So kind of got an eye for design. I would not say that I'm like a great designer, but I've got an eye for it. And I saw these posters around town that were like Rati D and Friends at the Holt Center. And I was like, wow, that girl and I look like we need to be friends. I was like, look at her smile. And like, oh my gosh, I love her. And I was like, but why is she on this kind of a crappy poster? Like, what is this? And so I saw it was City of Eugene. So I messaged them and I was like, I remade this poster. She needs a better poster. And I sent it to them as a PDF.
What?
And they responded saying, she makes her own poster. And I was like, oh, okay.
You're like classic,
So
the musician that does all their own artwork, performs all that stuff. Yeah. That's cool.
Right. I was like, oh. So then I had her name in my head, and I work at McKinney Children's Program, which is a nonprofit in town that actually benefits children in Makindu, Kenya. And that's kind of another thing. Short story there is I got that gig from Zev, who's the lead singer and guitarist, and Soul Vibrator's mom is best friends with the executive director at McKinney. And Tracy, Zev's mom, and I were talking one day about how I'm like a public relations major and I'm really into outreach and stuff. And she's like, oh my gosh, my friend has this nonprofit and needs somebody to work for her. And I was like, what's the nonprofit? And she's like, something to do with kids in Kenya. And I was like, I'm Kenyan and that sounds perfect. So I ended up getting that. And now Diana is definitely like somebody that Diana's the executive director there. She's like I feel like Diana's like the type of person I want to be. She's like,
That's
I
awesome.
love her 100%.
Mentor.
And
Love that.
the way she lives her life, the kind of parent she is, the kind of friend she is. Oh my gosh, I love that lady. And on top of that, she does that. So we needed a musician for our auction benefit dinner. And I was like, oh, I'm going to reach out to Rati. And so I did. And Rati agreed to do the gig, and I hired her for that. And she saw me at this event. I'm dressed real nice. I'm like working, and I pay her and I say, nice to meet you. We should have tea sometime. You should come over for dinner. And I said, actually, I'm a musician too. You should come to one of my shows. And she's like, okay, sure. I'll come to one of your shows. And she comes to one of my shows. And afterwards she's like, what? She's like, what? And I was like, what? She's like, that is not what I was expecting. And I was like, why not? She was like, you were all proper. You were so clean and, like so different. And then you're like a totally different person.
Getting it. Yeah. What a cool, strange way to get it, but what an honoring comment, right? Like,
I was like, yeah, no, there's a lot of different sides of me because of that.
I love that. And it's so fun to see and meet mentors and musicians like that, where I have a few people too, that I've connected to like that. And you just straight up see them on stage. You're like, hey, you're awesome. And I think that my style would mesh with your style. Let's try it out. And Soulseed has been so blessed to have a number of musicians connect with us, either vocally or instrumentally or both, producers, whatever. And you also fall into that category. And you and I had met, quite a ways prior to the connection, but quick, I'll set it up for you. And I'd like to hear your feedback on this, because really, I mean, you and I have, and this is 2017, maybe. That we dropped the album. So it had been a while. And we have this song, Possible Obstacles. And we were thinking about the chorus to follow Mikey's vocals. And Mikey had overdubbed us some of his own. I think Benny maybe give it a try. We were trying to do like layering of all of us. And somebody, I can't remember, I don't want to take credit, but somebody said, man, a female vocal, like it just changes things. It's a different energy. And we were thinking about it, and it kind of immediately we're like, Samira, like Samira's the one, let's get her in here. And really, it just took a phone call or whatever and was like, hey, girl, you down to do this? You're like, yes. So we end up in the studio, shouts out Tracktown Records here in Eugene, and kind of just take me through first the studio recording the song. And then we have our album release show later on, and you came up and performed it live with us for the first time at that point. So let's kind of wrap on that for a second, because I know that's a big deal show. That music video of you recording with us is on our YouTube. Possible Obstacles is the song, live at Hi-Fi. You can catch that for sure. Max and Joe Hughes and Braden did the production for that. So shouts out Joe Hughes Media and Max. But take me through that really quick, that process of maybe getting the invite in. And again, we knew each other but hadn't performed together yet. So just kind of take me from A to Z on that for coming in the studio and then performing with us as well.
Okay, so basically I came into the studio after you had asked me to, and I was just like so shocked that I was invited to do this with Soul Seed. Like, I had seen your guys' crowds and I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm about to be a part of this. Like, I cannot believe they chose me. So
you're sweet.
It was one of those other things where I was like, Alex, listen to this. What do you think? You know, when I get there, it's like totally different because that's just normal. And yeah, I just remember singing the chorus and probably the first time. And then you came in, Sky, and you were like, yeah, that was fucking awesome. Do it again. Let's do it again. And I was like, yeah, let's do it again. And because of that energy, I was able to like add on some extra stuff on the outro. And then you came in and you were like, yes, that Christina Aguilera shit. And I was like, yes, that's what I was going for. And I just, oh my God, I could work with him all day. Like,
oh, cool. Well, I'm glad you took it that way, because I didn't want to be overbearing and I don't want to coach you on singing. Like, that's not my jam. I do a lot of other things. I'm not a great singer. I don't see myself as a great singer. I'm like, you're coming in to do that. I trust what you're going to do. So I wasn't even talking about your singing specifically. I was just saying energetically, style, whatever. And again, you and I knew each other, but we had never worked together formally. Right. And I felt it too, like the mesh in the communication that you and I had. You didn't take anything as criticism. You know, you didn't kind of like, hey bro, like I know what I'm doing, you know. It was just like, okay, cool, let me try again. And you tried, and honestly, I don't even think it took that many. I mean, we did a lot of takes because you have a lot of layering, but as far as the style and stuff, like you stuck it pretty quickly. And I was like, that's it. Let's just nail that. Like you have it down. Let's nail that. And once we had it down, and people can hear it on the album, Possible Obstacles, Samira comes in hot, especially at the end, and you have a little growl in there, and like that. Yeah, the Christina Aguilera stuff is awesome because, you know, you're a powerhouse on stage, and I think it came across in the recording, which, you know, from recording is hard to do. It's hard to bring the energy you do on stage on a recording, and I thought you absolutely nailed it. So I'm just so pumped that it came through that way. So I'm glad I wasn't overbearing.
No, not at all. But like, you're super right. When it comes to performing, it's like totally different because you're matching the energy of the crowd. But when you're recording, you don't want that much energy. Like, it's not going to sound good. So that was something that I've definitely learned over the years. But I mean, speaking of crowds, playing with you guys at the album release party sessions, I think it might have been Hi-Fi back then.
It was Hi-Fi, yeah. But either way, sessions now. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it was so cool. I remember when I heard you calling my name on stage, I was just like, wow, this is so crazy. And actually, after that show, I got a bunch of messages from people who were like, I just saw you playing, and oh my God.
That's what it's all about. I love that. I love hearing that.
That was incredible. And I was like, I'm going to at least try to do this song. And I ended up playing with you guys over at Whitaker Block Party, I think that same year at Hop Valley stage. My dad was there, and I think that's probably where you met him. And it was just incredible to like be there with that energy of all the Seedstronauts, you know, like,
awesome.
Oh my gosh, I just thought it was amazing. And it was like, I felt like I really vibed with Benny and Michael, Magic. Like it just like all felt so comfortable. It felt so comfortable.
Well, what's so fun about that performance, the album release show. So first of all, it's the boys and I are going to have a podcast strictly about this night because it was a very special night in Soulseed history that'll never happen again. Because we had just it was a Spark album release show, and we decided to play the album front to back per song, right? So song 1 and all the way to the end, and we never did that after that, and we just won't probably ever again. But having the crowd and the energy in that room, it's about 600 plus people in that room, not to mention the artists and the crew. So like, I don't know, 650 maybe in that hall when it's sold out, and having your energy. And what I love about that video specifically is when you turn it on, again, go to YouTube, check out, Soulseed Possible Obstacles. You'll see it featuring Samira Lobby. And when I call you up, I'm kind of just doing my like, hey, next song, like I'm that guy, right? Like this next song is this one and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't see all this until I watched the video after, but you come on stage and you're kind of, hyping yourself up like, oh, this is going to be dope, and yeah. And I think the first thing, like I start the song and I think the first thing is like Mikey or Benny, I can't remember, but one of them just immediately gave you like a big hug and was just like, you're good, girl. Like, let's crush this. Yeah. And you could see, I don't know about nerves necessarily, but you could see yourself just kind of like, all right, like you morphed, you could tell it was just like, all right, let's crush. Like you had the energy transfer right then. And then you just absolutely stuck the performance and it was phenomenal. So I think about it often. It's definitely one of our most viewed videos that we have, period. When we put that up, I tag you in it all the time, like I said, and people are always coming at us. If they haven't seen it before, they're like, holy shit, who is she? Or if they've seen it before, they're just like, man, Samira absolutely smashed that track. So it's one of our more powerful songs. We're going to do hopefully a lyrical breakdown on that. It's a really heavy song, Possible Obstacles. I mean, everybody has them right now. We just opened up this podcast for 45 minutes talking about the obstacles that you and I have come across this year with the quarantine and your father and losing jobs and doing everything else. And that has a number of them as well. And Mikey has a lot of personal things in that song. And you added such a proper kind of a roar, like an energy that song needed. And then the didge comes in and it's just such a heavy song. And so I really thank you and appreciate you for contributing to the song. But the way that you contributed, really just, we couldn't have asked for anything better. It was outstanding.
I mean, that was one thing that made me love the song too, is what it's about. And it could be about something different for each person, which just kind of gives everybody like that connection.
That's music, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's music, but there's some songs that are like so ridiculous, like met this girl at the club, we're gonna get it on, but this was like, damn, the energy, the lyrics. I mean, it's just so well put together and so relatable, and it feels good. Like you feel the music a lot with that song. So.
Well, we'll have to do it again when things clear up. We will get back on stage. I want to see you as soon as possible. We'll get big hugs when we can. And I can't wait to not only perform with you again, but watch you perform Sage Crow the Flock, Soul Vibes. We'll get you back up with Soulseed. And we have so many more endeavors. We're just getting started, I'm sure. Yeah. This has been an absolutely phenomenal conversation, Samira. You and I have been talking again for a couple of weeks, trying to negotiate times. And it's just so busy. The world is so uncertain right now, and you make plans and then we they fall through, and it is what it is. And I'm so glad that we finally got time to do this. I'm really honored to have you on. I've wanted to have a number of these conversations with you for quite a few years, frankly, and now we finally have a platform in order to do so. And I look forward to following up on this as well eventually as well. So thank you so much for your time this evening. I do have final 5 questions that I want to crush out with you, and we will get out of here. But before we get into the final 5 questions, or anything else you'd like to add about your story, your journey, anything else you'd like to tell the Seed Not family in general?
I would just say for my journey, I'm realizing that it really never ends. And the world and life is all about learning and challenging ourselves. We never know it all. And, being compassionate, being patient, those are some things I'm really trying to work on. Reading this book that I hope that some of you have. It's called The Four Agreements. It is changing my life. I mean, it's just like, shoot, I wish I read that 10 years ago, but I know that there's a lot of people who feel that way right now. And then another one I recommend is called Chatter. It's by a neuroscientist, talking about the stories that we tell ourselves. And, being a woman of color, a small woman in a town that, believes to be very inclusive and everything, I definitely realized that there's some of those things that I have instilled within me, just like a lot of other people, and no matter who you are and what you look like. And it feels good to get a grasp on those things to some degree and work through those. So I guess if anything, that's what I want to share.
Well, it's fantastic. And I would like to, listeners, we have those links to both of those book suggestions in the description below. If you're on the podcast, make sure to check it out on YouTube, and you can find those links. And if you're on the YouTube, make sure to just go down below here and hit those two book suggestions by Samira. Samira, again, it's been an absolute treasure to have you on, girl. Super supportive of you. We love you, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I know that your journey with music specifically is kind of it's still ascending, which is so fun. Like I can't wait to have this conversation in 3 years and just see what else is growing with you. So I'm happy for it. Final 5 questions, girls. Let's rapid fire on these. So if you, number one, if you were not living your current life as a singer/performer, again, you're now in multiple groups, what do you believe you would be doing instead? So this is kind of an interesting question today because of the quarantine life and you're not playing as often, but just kind of in general, if you weren't involved in the music scene at all, if that never came to fruition, however you want to think about it, what would you be doing if music wasn't a focal point?
I believe that I would be a nutritionist. I am so on top of health and lifestyle. I totally love that combination. And I've actually managed my own diseases because of it. No medicine. And I think that nutrition, lifestyle, our beautiful earth, our Mother Earth has everything that we need to heal and survive. Obviously, to some extent, some things are definitely not on that level, but can possibly be prevented if we do that. So I believe that I would be doing something with nutrition.
I absolutely love that. Amber, my better half is a nutritionist, health advisor, and we have battled multiple allergies, internal symptoms as well without using medicine. We choose not to use medicine in our family when we can avoid it. And it's been all food choices. And honestly, frankly, maybe we should just have another podcast strictly about nutrition, because going into this, I didn't know that was a passion of yours, but it's a passion of mine as well. Again, being a former athlete, I'm way past my prime these days, but I used to be very, very, very diligent, and I'm hoping to get back to it. In 2017, I had an intestinal infection, basically an overgrowth of candida, which is common, but mine was very bad. And basically, I ended up changing my diet. I went completely plant-based on the road, mind you, which was very difficult, especially traveling through the South. But I went completely plant-based, sugar-free, alcohol-free, the whole thing, for 8 weeks, and kicked the candida. And in the process, I lost 40 pounds, and it was healthy 40 pounds. And I frankly want to do it again. But it is amazing what kind of transformations you can make in just the ingestion. I wasn't working out. I wasn't running miles. I wasn't lifting heavy weights. I changed my diet. I dropped sugar. I dropped alcohol. And my entire body, my being became so much better. So I would love to expand on that in another conversation with you. So continue on that journey. I'd love that.
And I actually have seen some of your posts before about some of that. And so I'm glad to hear that. I actually want to add one more thing though. I feel like I would want to do it, or I would at least work with elderly people. When I was in high school, I was a server at a retirement home, and I'm still in contact with many of the people that I used to see. I eventually became a activities coordinator, like fill-in, I guess, a substitute. And I love working with the elderly. I just value them so much, and I feel like they need, or they deserve better care and attention than they get.
I love that.
That would be another thing.
I love that. That was some of my favorite. I come from a huge Italian family, and my mom actually has 4 sets of parents. Not anymore, unfortunately. All of them are deceased, but my mom was adopted twice, and she has step parents as well. So when I was a kid, only on my mom's side, I had 4 grandma and grandpa.
Oh,
and my dad as well has 2 sets of family. So we had a massive family growing up. I have a million cousins. Anyway, growing up with elderly in my family, active constantly around me in school, when we used to like walk down the street to the old folks home and sing them Christmas carols or do arts and crafts and whatever. It was some of the most fun I had in school. A, it was a field trip, but B, the general joy. Like, I mean, even at 10 years old, I felt like they were my buddies, and the energy that they got from kids. Again, the older I get, the more these kind of, these situations come to reality for me, which is such a blessing. So again, I commend you on that as well. Nutrition and working with the elderly. You are definitely a person of service. I love that. All right. Number 2, what are 3 words or phrases of advice for aspiring female front leaders out there honing their craft, wanting to take the next step? So this could be a musician. This could be an activist. This could be an artist. This could be a business owner. However you want to take this, what are 3 words or phrases for aspiring female front leaders?
Number 1, listen to your body. I mean, you're going to be in some situations where, I don't know what all situations will be, but I just think number 1 rule for all people, especially women, is to listen to your body and listen to how you're feeling, and not to ignore any of those feelings or thoughts, and to speak up. I mean, speak up about how you're feeling, speak up about what your experience is, and then speak up when you see something that you want to do. Even like, it doesn't have to be speak up because something bad is happening, but speak up for yourself and share your ideas. I think one of the things that happens a lot is that we feel intimidated because we're worried that somebody's not going to really think that's so cool. But in reality, like, be different. That's the cool thing. Have something different. If you have something different, you bring it to the table and someone doesn't like it, that's okay. They may not, but eventually you'll find people who do, and that's going to be the people you vibe with and the people you should work with. So I would say to listen to your body, speak up, and don't be afraid to like try that new thing. That's another thing for sure.
I love that. And isn't it interesting that growing up as a child, trying to fit in, even as a young adult, and still the reality is everybody wants to belong, whatever it is. So you always are craving others' acceptance of you. But at the same time, and I totally agree with you, at the same time, one of my kind of mantras is like, stay in your lane. And those that want to ride with you are going to ride with you. Those that won't are going to go their own direction. And like, it's okay. I think that's what's the difference now between me today and me 5 years, 10 years ago, is I just craved other people's acceptance so much that I would do things to the deficit of myself to gain their appreciation or to gain their acceptance. Now, I'm not rude. I'm not like giving the finger to people that don't agree with me or anything like that. I'm just saying, hey, Samira, you're an adult. I'm an adult. We've got a lot of things in common. We have a lot of things not in common. And that's totally okay. Let's vibe on the things we have in common. Let's learn from each other. Let's teach each other. And on the other things you don't, you're going to have other people that vibe with you on those other things. And that's how you expand your web and your network. So I really appreciate and value those 3 words of advice.
Yeah. I mean, coming off of that, another thing I'd add is definitely know your worth. Like,
that's a hard one.
that's super hard, but like we have such a tough time with like feeling like we are worth it. I think I even made a comment saying like, I'm in this band with a bunch of musicians I don't feel like I deserve to be in, or something about Sage Crow. And then like at the end of the day, there's probably a reason they asked me to be a part of it. You know, I might bring something else to the table. And that's, I guess, my example of like, know your worth to everybody listening.
I love that. Absolutely. And the song quickly for Sage Crow the Flock that I've just seen recently, a live performance of Stand Up, is absolutely fire. 4 lyricists, incredible band. Rati may or may not be rapping and singing in 2 different languages. It's absolutely phenomenal. Make sure to check that out. I will also put that in the link below. All right, girl. Number 3 here. How can folks best support what you're working on? So again, whether that's your efforts with your nonprofits, whether that's a new endeavor you have, music, whatever it can be, how can the Soul Seed and Seed Shernot community support what you're working on?
So I actually am doing a few other things that are on my website. So maybe we can link that. But
plug it. What is your website?
It's just my name, samiralobby.com.
Great.
And I do moderating and announcing. I do modeling, and what else is on there? Definitely my music stuff. So when it comes to any of that, all of it is really community based. Like I model for local businesses, and then for local photographers and events. And I'm totally down to do bigger things. And I would say that I've also done announcing and moderating and producing some events. Like I moderated, or I guess I announced at We Rise, which was one that happened in 2019 in August with Tara Burke, who was amazing. And I did another one at Hot Mama's Kitchen and Bar with my good friend Angie Marzano, and that was called Rise Together Eugene. And I have done moderating for with the University of Oregon's president, Michael Schill, and Juan Carlos, who's the dean at the School of Journalism. We did a freedom of expression roundtable, which was pretty cool to be a part of. I got to make up my own questions for that too. And it was cool to like be able to ask the president of the university these questions and like hear his answer. And honestly, I came up with questions sometimes on the spot, and it was all recorded, and it ended up all being part of it. So definitely showing up for our community is like the biggest thing that I'd say for people to step up and do. And when I say our community, I mean for our country, and I mean for the people that you care about. I mean for your neighbor in the apartment next door that you have never talked to, but you've lived next to each other for 10 years. I mean, we have totally changed as a society to be looking down at our phones, or to like add the person on Facebook, but not to like have a conversation with them face to face. I think that is kind of one of the reasons why I really love the elderly too. Like they know that life. They know the life of connecting. They know the life of sharing stories. They are patient. We're not anymore. And I'm totally guilty of that. I'm like developing wrist issues from texting so much. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. But basically, I think that for supporting what I'm working towards, don't be afraid to reach out, and don't be afraid to reach out to anyone else. Like the worst thing, my dad used to always say, the worst thing they can tell you is no. And what's going to happen after that? Well, they said no, so you have to move on. And I'm kind of at that place right now. So volunteer, get out and volunteer. And then as for me, I'd love to be a part of what you're working on. I'd love to give advice. I'd like to have a conversation. I have AirPods and I put them on, and I do a lot of chores, and I go on 4-mile walks every day. So connect. That's what I'd say.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And you're such a joy to have a conversation with, you know, I mean, we're having a formal quote unquote interview and podcast, but I mean, you know, I definitely will just be hitting you up on the random at this point to have
so what, Sky?
Yeah, have a little conversation. I love it. All right, two more here. Number 4, if you could travel anywhere in the world that you have not yet been to, where would it be and why?
This question was hard for me because, this question is hard for me because there's a lot of places in this world. My dad always wanted to go to South America. So South America, I want to go fulfill my dad's dream. But in reality, I'm so freaking fascinated by China.
Okay.
China is so controversial.
China's huge as well. Anywhere particular in China or just in general, get to China and find your way there.
I guess so. Yeah. Get to China, find my way around.
Okay.
I don't even know. I feel like Japan is another one, but because of all that China is and how people are, people hate China. I don't know. Everything's made there. It's just, it to me seems so fascinating. I honestly don't have any plans of going there. It's not really on my list of places to go. But when I do think about what am I super fascinated about, I think about China. And honestly, I have to also say, the reason it's not really on my list is because I love hot weather. I want to be somewhere where there's an ocean and there's palm trees and I'm in my bathing suit the whole time drinking pina coladas. That's my kind of traveling. And I don't think that I'm a major, I want to go to the museums type of person, at least right now. That's how I'm feeling during COVID.
Yeah.
When I go to places, I typically go to those places, but yeah, I'm really fascinated at this point at China, not anywhere in particular. But just, I want to see the technology and.
Fair enough. I love it. And I agree with you. There's a lot of places in Asia specifically. I would like Japan for sure. Thailand, absolutely. Vietnam, South Korea. There's a lot of places in Asia in general I would like to get to, but China would be interesting to get there and see what it's like for yourself. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. So much about it all the time.
Because, we're only fed what we're fed, you know what I mean? And it would be eye-opening, I'm sure, in a number of realms to get the information. In person. Again, I traveled pretty much only the United States with Soulseed, but even going to the Midwest, the East Coast, the South, places I'd never been before, you show up there and you don't know anybody, right? You're singled out. You're no longer, in your friend group, your mindset, whatever. And all of a sudden it's important that you adapt. And it would be interesting to see what is really going on in China and the technology, as you mentioned, and the mass production and the mass population, all these things. I want to visit that for myself and get my own views on the Chinese culture and Asia in general. My girls are obsessed, and we had this big kind of plan to get to Thailand, and then the pandemic hit and we weren't able to go. But many countries in Asia in general are on the list. And again, it's just a matter of getting back into traveling. But I love that one. And China, there's so much to see in China. There's so much to see.
Yeah,
so
that's medicine there is a big thing for me too. I'm I've definitely dabbled in Chinese medicine every time I can. I like to stop at one of those, the Chinese herbal store and get medicine from them.
Love that.
And all the herbs and supplements that they take, the teas. But mostly, I've heard so much about it that I know what it's like. My mom is from Kenya. I've been to Kenya many times. If you listen, or I shouldn't say many times. I take that back. I've been to Kenya once. And if you listen to the radio or the news, it's Kenya is so dangerous and be careful in Africa. And oh my gosh, there's giant bugs and they're going to get you. It's not like that. The people are the sweetest. The food is fantastic. Everything there is just unreal chill. It's so amazing.
Usually the case. And that's why, you're going to get me fired up here at the end of the episode. That's why I think it's so important that A, you travel, and B, you turn off your media outlets if they're not, they're not speaking of positivity, you're right. There's unsavory situations everywhere. There's not nice people everywhere. But you know what? There's a lot more of awesome people, love, hugs, welcomeness, people willing to take you into their home, incredible food, incredible scenery, incredible travel, people. God, man, you're going to get me all fired up because I heard that forever. You know, we go to state after state. We'll be like, hey, you know, family, we're on our way to Texas. Never been there. Like, who knows somebody? And then you get all these comments. You're like, oh God, Texas. And then you get there. You're like, yeah, I mean, you know, there's some things in Texas maybe I don't agree with, but there's so many amazing people. Also, there's amazing scenery. There's these towns. There's these clubs. Blah blah blah. Same thing with the East Coast, the South, the Midwest, whatever. I mean, all you're going to hear is that person's perspective, right? So if somebody loved their experience in Kenya, guess what you're going to hear? It's incredible. It's amazing. Can't wait to go back. If they didn't like their experience in Kenya, guess what you're going to hear? So you got to be careful. You got to do it on your own. I totally agree with you. Samira, I have one more question for you and we're going to get out of here. But before we do that, I just want to acknowledge you and send some extra love your way. Again, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. We've had a 2-hour episode and it's felt like 15 minutes. And I just so appreciate your time, your energy. Again, we've known each other for quite a few years, but we haven't been able to have these kind of conversations because we're always running on or off of stage, which is super fun, but it's not time for this. I really appreciate you sharing, you know, personal situations with your father and your parents and the fact that we related so much on kind of our, you know, type of relationship. I thought that was a lot of fun. And I just really encourage you to stick with music, which I know you will, but you're really on the ascending and seeing you perform and growing as a musician in just the last couple of years has been incredible. And you're ever upward. I appreciate that. Your work in activism, your work with the elderly, your work with nonprofits, the McKindu Children's Program. I mean, you're doing so many incredible things. Your heart is enormous, and I'm always rooting for you. So I really appreciate you. I commend you for standing up for what you believe in, following your passion with music, and serving others less fortunate for you. So keep it going, girl. You got my vote every single time, and I really appreciate you. My last question, what is a personal accomplishment you're most proud of?
Well, still, I guess that I would say I'm super freaking happy that I did jazz combos in 2015. It really changed my life. I mean, met the love of my life, met my band. I really probably wouldn't be talking to you right now if I didn't take that class. So super glad that I put aside a lot of things and decided to just like, you know, it was part of the time of like, I'm changing my major all the time. I don't know what I'm doing. I guess I'll do this class. So I'd say that I put aside some of my thoughts about if I'm able to do this and just did it. And I'm super glad that I did that. That's definitely something that I feel super good about. And then the other thing would be to take care of my health via lifestyle. That's been a big thing for me too. I have Crohn's disease, and the doctors told me I had to be on this medicine or else, pretty much. And I went to an Ayurvedic practitioner, went to a Chinese medicine doctor, went to a functional medicine doctor, and those are my people now. And I'm doing everything through diet and lifestyle. So I'm very happy about being able to make those changes in my life. Both of those things, I mean, doing the jazz combos class and then managing my health without medicine, which I have no judgment for anybody who has, but it definitely has been a good experience for me. So, but it's also hard. That's a hard one to do.
Exactly. And I appreciate you sharing. You're having Crohn's disease. Amber's father does as well. And, you know, again, I commend you for, you know, going the Ayurvedic route and going Chinese medicine and trying to better your body and your overall spirit best that you possibly can. And I wish you health and strength, of course. And again, I appreciate you coming on. Before we get out of here, you've mentioned your website. You mentioned your couple of groups that you're involved with, some of your nonprofits. Let us know where we can find you, whether it's social media pages, your website, anything else where you want to direct the Seedtronauts to find more of your content?
Yeah, I would say to go to my website and join the list. I do not send anything out unless I have anything to send out, which recently has not been anything. So, yeah, just go to my website, and I think at the bottom of the page, there's a place to sign up there, and I'd be happy to share anything. It also says to connect with me. I'm super open to that. I believe that one of the most powerful things about the era that we are in right now is the fact that we can connect with anybody, anywhere.
I love that. I love that. And it's special, and it's super true. I've reached out to many musicians I never thought I would be able to even talk to, and now we're friends. In the sports world, I've reached out to writers and podcast hosts and TV hosts and personalities, former athletes I never thought I would have a conversation with, and now they're in my phone as somebody I can text at a whim and have a conversation with. So when Samira says reach out and connect with her, I encourage you to do that. And make sure to go to samiralobby.com. You can find her on social medias as well. And of course, you can find the Soul Seed brand anywhere on social media as well. Samira, it's been an absolute treasure. I appreciate you on here. Thank you again so much for putting in 2 hours of your time. I always free flow these conversations. They could be 20 minutes, they could be 3 hours, whatever. And it felt nice. It felt comfortable. And I, again, appreciate you sharing your story. It matters to me, and I've wanted to hear it for a really long time. So thank you again for your time and your energy here on the podcast. And I can't wait to reconnect with you.
I can't wait either. Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely been an incredible experience, and I really miss you all at Soul Seed. So hope to see you soon. We'll
get it again, girl. All right, y'all. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. One more time, the one and only Samira Lobby. Thanks for tuning into the More Than Music podcast. We appreciate it if you'd leave us an honest rating and review wherever you're listening to the podcast. And please also subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all social media platforms at Soul Seed Music. That's at SOLSEED Music. For those that leave a 5-star rating and review, be sure to listen for your comments to be read on a future episode. Stay tuned for our next episode, and feel free to share this podcast with a friend or a family member, and let's expand the branches of our family tree. We appreciate you vibing with us today, and we'll catch you next time on More Than Music.